All right, so now we come to our main part of the program, and we're lucky. We have two great thought leaders in the arts. And to moderate both discussions, I'm going to welcome Virginia Hepner to the screen, who's going to organize our two fireside chats. Virginia, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Cannon. Always a great day to talk about arts.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, Virginia, you need no introduction, but of course you were, you do so much for our club just in the background as Rotarians. But of course, you were our retired CEO and president of the Woodruff Arts Center. So this is right in your alley. And of course, your corporate board leadership is just been incredible with Cadence Bank and, you know, Oxford Industries and National Vision Holdings, public companies. So you know a lot about the arts and the business world and how important they are to each other. So we're in your good hands.
Well, thank you, Ken. It's great to be here. And it's so appropriate that today was the day that Frank joined us officially because arts and justice are very entwined. And I actually was exposed to the arts because of my volunteer work with the Metro Arts Fund, which is a program of the Community Foundation. So it's all related. And when Hala and I talked about the opportunity to talk about the Woodruff Arts Center today, we felt it was extremely important to actually begin the program with someone who actually does the art. And we couldn't think of a better person than Kenny Leon. So hopefully Kenny will join me on screen.
Hey.
There he is.
Hey, my leader, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. You always make me happy to see you. And look at that smile. So, Kenny, you're we only have a few minutes, but I just have to say how grateful we are to see how happy we are for you and so impressed we are with your success. But Atlanta will always claim you, just so you know. You could be on Broadway, but you're an Atlanta guy. And you graduated from Clark Atlanta, and then we held on to you for quite a while here, a decade at the Alliance Theater. You co-founded True Colors Theater, which is still going great. And you've had an amazing, I can't think of actually someone who's done a greater job that I'm aware of intertwining careers in the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector to the more commercial end of art. And tell us about what you're seeing there in the current environment and how each of those worlds are faring.
Well, you know, I do not know how to answer questions.
So, or talk about anything you want to talk about.
I'm going to try to speak from the heart, but I want to say it's great to be with the Rotarians this morning because all of us, we love God and we love our country. And the best way to talk about what I have to say as an artist is to say, last year, I had a show running on Broadway, and it was a soldier's play. And on March 12th, Broadway closed down. And then I had to return home to Atlanta, a place that I call home, that I love, that you guys know you've made me the artist that I am. And but for the last 25 years, I realized that 80% of the time I'm gone. I'm in New York, I'm in Canada, I'm somewhere doing a film. So I came home, and out of my own fear or insecurity, I said, what am I going to do now? I don't know when we're going to get a chance to gather in a sacred place and share stories, because being in the American theater, the nonprofit theater, the commercial theater, just gathering in that sacred space, we are, I think, anti-COVID. We are the opposite of COVID. So I knew we would be the last thing to return to normalcy. And so what I did, arriving in Atlanta on March 14th last year, first thing I did, I said, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to play Mahalia Jackson's music, because that gave me a sense of comfort. I grew up Southern, Christian, and Black. And putting on Mahalia Jackson, because my mother was a gospel singer, putting on that music just made me feel, okay, everything's going to be okay. We don't know when we're going back to work. We don't know exactly what this virus is. We don't know how your life is going to keep unfolding as an artist, but it's okay. So I played Mahalia Jackson for 2 hours, and then I would pray for an hour. And I've never prayed that long. Pray for an hour, And then I would meditate for an hour. And I only recently had learned how to meditate. And I started reading this book by Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. And then, so I would Mahalia Jackson, pray, meditate. And I just got a Peloton bike and I would ride the bike for a while. So I was just trying to work on mind, spirit, and body. And then I started reading old James Baldwin books. So I did that every day, every single day for the first 7 weeks. I did that. And at the end of that 7th week, I get a call from Robin Roberts from Good Morning America and from Tanya Lopez at Lifetime. And they say, Kenny, we want to offer you the Mahalia Jackson story to tell it for our network and for America. And I was like, do you know that I've been
told them
every day, like with Mahalia Jackson? No, we didn't know that. We just, you did Steel Magnolias for us, so we want you to do this film. And I was like, okay, I called my mom, I've been offered this. I don't know if I could do it, but it's a great thing to have someone want you as an artist. She says, honey, I don't care what you do, but you have to tell that story. You know why, son? Because you're Black, you're Christian, and you are Southern. And when you get to tell stories in America through the lens of which you are made, it's nothing greater than that. So now the Mahalia Jackson film comes out this Saturday on Lifetime, and I think it's my best work. And it's my best work in the sense that everything that I've done before in my Academy Theater days, my Alliance Theater days, my live musicals on NBC, all of that has made me, put me in a good position to tell this story. And this story, what I did was I looked at Mahalia Jackson through the lens of us all going through what we went through last year. And I realized that Mahalia Jackson lived through the pandemic of 1918. Mahalia Jackson lived through the Great Depression of 1929. Mahalia Jackson lived through the First World War. Mahalia Jackson lived through the Second World War. Mahalia Jackson lived through the Civil Rights Movement and was MLK's confidant and was the one that told him to tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream. That was a woman inspired Dr. King to do that. So what I'm hoping in this film, I'm hoping through that lens, we all will find ourselves. We all will say, oh, she was knocked down 10 times, but she got up 11. All of us get knocked down, we get up. And if she can come through the pandemic, so can we. If she can come through the depression, so can we. It's like if I was listening to the pledge of the allegiance to the flag at the beginning of your day. And I said, wow, that's my greatest wish, is that we could live up to what we say in our pledge to the flag. If we could just really live up to that, then that's that. But as an artist, these are challenging times. But the good news is that theater is coming back, regional theater is coming back. I may even get the chance to do something at the Woodruff Arts Center that may lead to Broadway. We're in the discussions about that. We talk about that, but that may happen. And looks like Broadway is going to be up and kicking, really good around December and January. So I love talking with you. And I don't know if you have any other questions, but did I answer your first question?
Yeah, I guess. Who cares? It sounded great to me. Listening to your enthusiasm and your depth, I'm always so appreciative about you, Kenny, because you're the one that introduced me to August Wilson decades ago with your production of Fences. I watched American Son on Netflix, which for all those people watching, if you haven't seen that, watch it, because it so intertwines the ability of storytelling with serious issues. And it's important to do the whiz. It's important to have fun, pure entertainment, but you've had a remarkable success of intertwining really deep issues in a very inviting way, which to me has always been the power of art, of having conversations among people who may not seem on the outside to have much connection. But as you laid out with Mahalia, we're all just people, and we've all lived through this experience. So tell us, there's a little hint you gave us. How do you choose projects? This is a more general question versus beyond Mahala or whatever. How do you intertwine what's important to you right now in terms of how you choose projects? Because you have choice. You have choice now. That would be my last question.
Whether people know it or not, I choose project based on what I think is the possibility for impact to my fellow Americans. It's about just, impacting them. When I think about the pandemic that we've gone through, it's like I look at nurses and doctors and police officers and teachers. They're certainly the first line of essential workers. But the next line of essential workers, I think, in the country is our storytellers, because we get a chance to tell those stories. We get a chance to give voice to the voiceless. We get a chance to put people in safe places to learn about each other. And if we keep learning about each other, maybe we will love each other. And I want to spend the rest of my life creating stories that I think help people love each other. And I always say to young folks, my greatest work is yet ahead. So I approach every story and every film that way. And if you get a chance, I did something with Will Smith called Amend on Netflix. And it's about the evolution of the 14th Amendment. And I would encourage all of us just to look at what we say in our papers, and we'll learn a lot about where we are now. I love you so much.
I love you, honey. And I love what you say in the message. So thank you. And maybe someday we'll get you for a full program on Rotary in person. All right.
Anytime.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you.
Peace. Bye. Well, let me welcome to our screen, actually a partner in the community who is, I would categorize probably as a business person who really, really appreciates the art and probably everything Kenny just highlighted so eloquently. And let's bring Hala Moddelmog to the screen.
Thank you, Virginia. Okay, I knew this already, but I knew never let Kenny go before us. I knew it. I
apologize. That was my fault. We should have ended with Kenny.
Exactly. And I have to say, if you guys are like me, I feel like I've been to church and synagogue and temple and everywhere, just even listening to him for a few minutes. But I mean, it sets up, what we want to talk about just beautifully, I think, because he's the real deal. And as you and I have had a conversation many times, if the art is not creating that empathy that brings people together, then, what are we doing it for? So I think that was a beautiful setup. Of course, I'm going to have to be a little bit boring and talk about the business side of things.
It's never boring.
Bringing in the money that we need to run it and everything. Yeah. But anyway, thank you for getting Kenny to be a part of this today, Virginia.
Oh, it's obviously my thrill. He's a rare quality and someone to follow. As well as we can, inspires us, and you work with so many inspirational people, Hala. There's a short list of people who could appreciate what your job is, and we're all Rotarians. Joe Bakoff and Doug Shipman and I are rooting for you and everything you're doing, and you follow obviously a spectacular career in the corporate arena at Coleman and then the Chamber of Commerce. And thank you, because we're all grateful for that. And we're especially grateful for you to step in at what would lightly call interesting times for the arts. For, as Kenny highlighted, the arts, and I'll say we, because I love it and I'm committed to it, is based on, the Woodruff Arts Center is based on people physically being together to experience art, to experience great music, and to see an original work of art. And it's tough to imagine an industry more rocked by the necessity to deal with the pandemic. So give us an update on how we're doing at the Woodruff Arts Center and also how we can help you, frankly.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Virginia. And you're right. And I will start because I think it's important for people to understand and realize, and not that you don't already, but let me first say it's just a privilege to get to to even be in this role, because there's so much good going on, and hopefully I'll talk fast in a few minutes and get a lot of it out there for you guys to hear. But I'm very, very privileged. But I will go back to a conversation, frankly, that I had with Doug Hertz about coming on to take a look at trying to run the Woodruff Arts Center, during the pandemic. And just like a lot of businesses and a lot of you guys in the audience, we were looking at a $30 million earned revenue gap. And when I say earned revenue, I'm talking about that special, precious time when people come together to look and see and experience and feel the art together. So, as you know, we were shut down. We still are closed at the Symphony Orchestra and the Alliance Theater. The good news is the High was able to open back up in July, and they've had some just killer exhibitions. And again,
fantastic shows,
just really incredible things. And everything is socially distanced and safe and all that. But it is a shame that some of those exhibitions actually came through during COVID, because they're so exciting. But we faced a $30 million earning gap, just like, again, a lot of restaurants, people who've just been shut down. We did what a lot of other business people have done. We've had layoffs, we've had furloughs, we've done things just to mitigate our expenses, as you might imagine. But the other thing I'll say is that the Atlanta community has really stepped up, and thank goodness. I mean, it's business, it's the business community here, it's the philanthropic community. But I do have to remind us, and I know you and everybody else who's ever run the Woodruff Arts Center reminds people all the time, we are 49th out of 50 states, 49th in arts funding for the state of Georgia. So even all the arts. So we have to remember that, and we have to try to do something about it, number one, but that's not today's topic.
Yes, I'll never give up.
But that really puts us in a bind, and that's where you have to depend on the business community and on the philanthropic community. And the first time that PPP came around, the Payer Protection Act, we were not eligible for it. The Woodruff Arts Center was not. But we're happy to say this time we are eligible for it, and we are putting in, for that loan. So we're taking advantage of things that are out there, but it's still a bit of a climb to get back to where we need to be.
Hey, look, can I just remind people, just from my memory, the Arts Center is such an economic engine, as are the arts in total for the state. But I think at a peak when I was there, we hired up to 1,000 people. And the beauty of the Arts Center, it's one legal entity, but because of the PPP requirements, you didn't qualify, correct?
That's
and
exactly.
A lot of those were part-time, but it's
exactly. And that's exactly what happened. We were employing over 500 people, and
full-time,
well over that, full-time at that time. And so we did not qualify. And that's a great thing that we're this big economic engine, but it didn't have us qualify. Unfortunately, in a sense, we do qualify this time because we're down.
Because you've had to shrink.
We've had to shrink. And that brings me to making sure that we do talk about all the other arts groups in town as we're having this conversation, because some of them, have certainly faced, the hardships too. But let's look at the good news of this COVID time. So the arts partners, and when I say we, let me just be very clear, okay? We're talking about the people at the Alliance Theater, the Symphony Orchestra, and the High Museum. I had nothing to do with any of this artistic part except trying to be there to be supportive. But so I use that term very loosely. The amount of virtual programming has just been incredible. And I'm just going to read you guys a few stats because it's pretty mind-blowing. And I'm going to start with the Alliance, which is appropriate since we had Kenny. But they've done so many virtual programs that have reached 48 states. I'm still trying to find out which 2 states don't care about the arts.
We need to send
them a note.
We'll get them.
In 9 countries, but there's one piece of art I want to tell you guys about. I think you may all know Pearl Clegg. She's a writer in a residence there, a playwright at the Alliance, and Pearl has a phenomenal civil rights history herself. But she had written a play called Sit In, and I don't want to spoil the plot for you, but it's really about a young girl now who wants to sit in around climate change. And she goes to her grandfather who, did sit-ins in the civil rights movement. But then she's got a very practical, focused mother who wants her on her studies, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you kind of get the idea of how that will go. But here's the fun thing about that. We couldn't do a play. And so this is the very first time that we've turned it into an animated play. So they took that play, they did animation with people in town, the actors and writers and people who did there. It was in the New York Times, GPB.
That's awesome. Amazing.
It's amazing. And then, so Atlanta Public Broadcasting, Georgia Public Broadcasting put it on. It's currently streaming to all 4th and 5th graders in the Atlanta public schools. And we think it's reached over 200,000 households. So I go into a little bit of detail on that particular piece because it just lets you know how this virtual piece has worked for us. And I do want to read about, talk about the symphony orchestra. Get ready for this 24 virtual concerts this season. Wonderful. And just not missing a beat. I mean, the musicians came through just beautiful things. Their numbers are 45 states and 21 countries. So this symphonic music has been going all over the world. And I'm happy to report too, especially given the fact that we are really focusing on BIPOC audiences, that they had 8 BIPOC artists, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and 12 BIPOC composers that were featured in those concerts. So you can imagine them going around the world.
Gosh,
and even with the high being open, they still did virtual too, because so many people wanted to see things. So they had a mix of about 90 virtual and in-person programs, and 7
fabulous curator talks, by the way.
Oh, exactly. Yeah,
fabulous
I know.
Curator talks. Oh my gosh, I learned so much.
If you don't do anything, you should really dial into those because the depth of the way you're exposed to the art. They also had their high frequency Fridays, jazz Fridays, and they got
they're back, right? I mean, in person. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, in person and back. And let me say this about the high too. Last year they had their camp for the little children. And they had it in person last summer. It was done so well, not one COVID case related to that. So the art partners are really stepping up. I mean, they're doing their thing for sure.
Honestly, Hala, can you imagine? I mean, I just have such immense respect for the creativity of these artists. I can't think of another industry that has pivoted as from one extreme to the other, and it just reflects their creativity to go from dedicated to live in-person activities to created an animated short that's really well done. I mean, it's just such a sign of, we talk about innovation in business. It's the essence of what art is. And I learned so much from just being around them, I just have to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I almost laugh and say, it's amazing how creative they've been. Of course, they've been creative. This is what they do.
I'd like, what
I know, and innovation to your point, but it's sort of like Kenny said too, I think what happened, and I watched it happen, is these people, these artists, these leaders of art groups, they can't not create art. Yeah. They were dying. It was killing them. It was really, really bothering them, weighing on them. Yeah. So they got, really, really creative, really fast, and just did some phenomenal things this year.
You know, it may be a slightly unfair question because it's in the mix, but do the art leaders anticipate continuing virtual and learning? And I know there may or may not be an answer to that, but it's just so interesting to think about the symphony being played in all these other countries and what that does for Atlanta's reputation, frankly, selfishly thinking about the impact that we're creating. What are your thoughts about that?
I think you can't go back really. I think that obviously it's like Kenny said, people are wanting to be in those groups and experience the art together. But when you can send it around the world and reach so many more people, and access is one of the huge things that we've been working on. As a matter of fact, we talked with Frank Fernandez about that because we want to provide access to everybody who wants to see the art, some people who don't even know they want to see the art at this point. And we're really, working hard on that. And the groups have done a phenomenal job on it. But yeah, I think the virtual will continue. And there have been some investments in making sure that the digitization has gone well. And so it's like, why not do some of that?
Right.
But we'll always, as human beings, want to come together to see the art. So
one of the challenges is, I know, and it's why that we're defined as a nonprofit organization, right? Is monetizing the value of what arts and culture is. And Kenny's done it through Broadway or film, but the heart of it is really starts in the nonprofit world. I mean, oftentimes in church, that's where people learn to play music, to do a play, then in school, and the Arts Center has always, from its founding, been very involved in education. And frankly, it's a collaborative sport, right?
Yeah.
They work with actors and artists from across Atlanta, but across the world. But something's really changed in terms of not just the commitment to education, but I would say, and because lots of reasons, Black Lives Matter, the awareness of inequities in the world, and maybe you could talk about how the artistic leaders are evolving and frankly sharing the wealth of the Arts Center in terms of your assets that you have.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I will say this, I knew there was world-class art there and I've known it forever. And I knew quite a bit about the level of education that went on. I mean, we're the #1 arts educator in the state of Georgia. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that says more about the state of Georgia than it does the Woodruff Arts Center, but again, we'll put that to the side. But the part that I've discovered in such a bigger way since I've been there is really the social justice work that these 3 groups are doing. And I'm going to start with High because, and I have to say this about all 3 of the groups. It didn't just start when George Floyd was murdered. It's been a long time coming.
From the beginning.
From the beginning, and it's such a beautiful story in lots of ways. But I will start with the High. Their numbers over the last 5 years have just tremendously increased in terms of having again BIPOC audiences, and they have their numbers. They went from in 2015 having 15% of their patrons be BIPOC audiences to 51% today. Yeah. And guess what that reflects? That reflects the Metro Atlanta region. It reflects Atlanta. It reflects who we are.
So impressive.
It's amazing. So the people going to the High or the people of Atlanta, everybody is welcome. And they did it in so many wonderful ways. And basically by featuring artists that are BIPOC artists, that are Black artists, that are LGBTQ artists, or women artists, people that exhibitions that people wanted to see and could see themselves working in there.
Could identify in. Yeah.
It's just amazing. Yeah. I mean, so those numbers just blow me away, and I could kind of go on and on with the stats, but
and it was so intentional too.
So intentional.
I mean, I remember Rand.
Yeah. And you can just
watch talking about it.
Yeah, I have to give Rand Suffolk and his board quite a bit of kudos there. It's just really, really, and it's just who they are. It's what they're about now. Yeah. And anyway, it's been wonderful. And I'll talk about the Symphony Orchestra next because their program is the oldest. For 27 years, they have been working with Black and Brown students who actually work with them for a number of years sometimes and work with the musicians. And they end up having these full scholarships to places like Juilliard. And they end up in these conservatories. And listen to these stats. For Black and Brown kids, only 1.8 of orchestral musicians right now are Black. 2.5% are Latinx. So if someone isn't working with these incredibly talented students to help them through the process and to get them into these conservatories, then we're not building that. We're not building it yet. And no pipeline. So we are working on that, and they've been doing it again for 27 years. So, and back to the Alliance, I do want to talk about one of their programs that's pretty different because it's about getting artists in the sort of the business side of it, the leadership side. So there's something called the Spellman Fellows. So these are women who come and work with the Alliance for a couple of years, and some end up being hired there to work. But it's basically, where is that arts leadership and how are we developing that group? And there's a slide that I'd love for you guys to put up too about the Alliance that shows 3 art groups in town. These are, you see here on your slide, the Tyrone Jackson and Friends, Sister Amaleka, and the Tiny Theater Company. These are BIPOC arts organizations in Atlanta that the Alliance is working directly with. So the Alliance has coming up a tent series where we're putting a big tent outside. People will be socially distanced. It'll be outside. It'll be super safe. And so
it's on the Woodruff campus.
It's on the Woodruff campus.
Right.
You won't be able to miss it.
It's almost sold out. So you guys need to.
Yeah. So get onto it right now. But the beautiful thing about that is we're putting up a tent during COVID so people can be safe. So why not share that tent? So Susan Booth, Susan, she's out there just doing things like Kenny did and all sorts of people, and making sure that she is working with groups that can also use the tent. But what I think is a much more beautiful part of the story is that not only will these groups be able to use our tent to perform in, but we also have been able to get some grants so that the cost of parking is free, the food and beverage is different, so that their patrons can come and be right there. So anyway, I wanted you guys to see those and just to know that there's just so much going on. I mean, it's very impressive. You'd be proud. It was going on while you were there, Virginia.
So proud. No,
it's up and
it's a whole other level. Level.
Yeah.
The because a lot of our members are primarily for-profit business members, and you and I are in both of those worlds. And it seems to me, if you look at what the Arts Center has done to make your organization more diverse, both the employees but also the artistry, and the partnership with entities like the ones you just discussed. There's a lot the rest of us can learn from how you've done that, from how the arts leaders have done it. For example, the Spellman, I remember Susan started the Spellman Scholars when I was there. And what they learned was, a lot of these guys, they have to get paid. Most artistic internships are unpaid across the world. So what does that tell you? It tells you only people of certain privilege can access it, right? So we funded it for multi-years. They had a commitment of a job upon graduating and learn the profession. So all those things are so important that I think for-profit businesses need to understand all the barriers and how you could use the assets to advance whatever your goals are. But if they're diversity and equity, those are the things you have to think about. And kudos to you guys for doing that.
Well, you know what, Virginia, this is a little bit off topic, but we are talking, mostly to a business audience and for our fellow Rotarians. And, one of the things that we hear a lot now is employee engagement. How can I get my employees engaged in things that are meaningful to them? And to me, if you can say to them, okay, you can come to the Woodruff Arts Center and again have art excellence. We know that we've got the awards. It's in the books. Again, people have been making great art there forever. But you can also have these experiences around social justice, and you can also see exhibits that again look like you and do some of the things that people are trying to thread the needle on in their businesses and are trying to move forward. And then to your point, I think all of these things do have to have sort of the business lens on them, because again, on the tent example, it's not enough just to say, wow, you can use my rehearsal space. That may be great. It
matters, but
it matters. It's good. But what if you don't have, all of the paperwork done that you need and various things that you can think of as you go through the checklist of how you would break down a barrier in business to make sure that the whole arts community in this market is getting through. So it's between employee engagement and pulling some of the other art groups through, we're pretty excited and pretty proud of that work.
Well, you should be proud, and thank you. So what's next? How can our Rotary members help you? what can we be doing to even other than buy tickets and attend and talk about it? What else do you need us to know about?
Well, I think the advocacy piece is huge. I mean, we have a lot of people sitting in this audience today that, are obviously members at the High. They have season tickets. They're great symphony goers. We need you to do that. We also need you, though, to be able to talk conversantly about us. And again, I kind of go back to the three things. It's art excellence, it's education, and it's this social justice work that I think is a little bit of a well-kept secret unless you really kind of break it down. But I'll tell you a few things that are coming up just to get people excited about the coming. Well, let's do the end of this year first, because we've got things coming up. So not only will you see sit-in, it's going to be on GPP again on Earth Day, which makes sense since it's about climate change. There's also a new play by a Candida playwright. That's a competition that the Alliance has had going on for a long time, and that's going to be streaming in May. And this is really current as well. It's called Data, and it's a play that looks at how big data plays, so to speak, into the U.S. immigration policy. So you can imagine how this kind of how that might right now. Absolutely fascinating. And then, with the ASO, they've just got, everything going on. They've got their, their concerts for the very young. They've got their music. They've got their youth concerts are happening. The talent development program that I mentioned, and I think I didn't really do justice to the name. That's the program that's working with brown and black kids to become musicians. There's a big spring recital in May. So if you want to see these young students perform, it's an opportunity, and just a lot of things going on, again, virtually, but starting to come back into the building, we think, in May. So that's kind of a hint there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So definitely for the ASO, there's something scheduled there, and it's not on my little cheat sheet, so maybe I'm not supposed to announce it yet. Anyway, I think there's going to be something to announce. And then at the High, I want to mention a couple of things. One is David Driscoll, who is a Black artist that you've probably heard of because the High has done so much with him over the years. He passed away recently. There's something called the Driscoll Dinner that always happens. There's just a lot of heart for him at the High and as a Black artist. But another one that's another exhibition that's there now is called Bestowing Beauty, and it is Persian masterpieces, and I want to emphasize that too, because that's the thing about the High. If you go at any given time, there can be art from places that you never imagined there would be this phenomenal tour. So this Persian pieces are just simply gorgeous. And upcoming, they have something called Underexposed, which is women's photography. And then something that kind of tugs on my heartstrings a little bit is something called Our Good Earth, and it's about rural life in America through photography. So I just think there's just so many incredible things happening there. So lots happening just to even finish out this season that's been, a little bit rocky.
Well, it's the heart of creativity in Atlanta, I have to say, and I'm so proud to help share this with the audience. And thank you, Hala, for what you're doing. And we'll continue to do. And thanks to all the board members, many of whom are Rotary members, including the chairs. Janine Brown is chair of the symphony, and Lila Hertz is chair of the Alliance, and Robin Howell is chair of the High, and I always say that people who are willing to chair nonprofit arts groups, you're going to heaven for sure. Because it's spiritually rewarding and also really important to our community. So, Ken, thank you for allowing me to chat with Kenny and Hala, and it's just a delight to get to talk about the arts at the Woodruff Arts Center.
Well, let me just say, you two are pros. I mean, it's just so fun watching you all unscripted just talk about, the arts. And Virginia, you led a great discussion. Hala, I mean, you touched on just the state of the Arts Center. You touched on education, how important the arts is to education. You touched on certainly equity and justice. One area that I just thought we'd explore just for a moment, you came from your great seat at the Metro Chamber, recruiting, building for Atlanta as an economic zone, economic development. Now you're at the Woodruff, and the Woodruff is such a key part of economic development for us. So you're in that prior role, how do you think of the center in developing, economically for us, and how does it stand, and where do you think it can head over the next year or two?
You know what? I mean, that's a great question, Ken, and I really appreciate it, because I will tell you, every single pitch I ever made at the Metro Atlanta Chamber had the Woodruff Arts Center in it as part of the pitch, because for Atlanta to have this gym, and I'm not sure, I think we sometimes in Atlanta take it a little bit for granted, but the size to have have a museum along with 2 performing arts groups, it just doesn't happen. And to also have those 3 pillars I talked about. So people, when they would come to town, and I've had Virginia do this, I've had Susan Booth do it, I've had Doug Shipman do it over time. We would have a company come into town. We would make sure that there was someone there from the Woodruff Arts Center, just, waxing poetically about the art, but what an economic engine it is. And that's one of the reasons we're so excited to bring artists back to work, and all of our people when this, when the pandemic lifts, is just to get everybody back there. It's a true jewel and gem for this market. And let me tell you, it sells companies, because I used to laugh and say, sometimes, you might have some of those people who they may never dart the doors of the Art Center, but they want to know it's there. And now it's a little bit different, because they want to know it's there because they know their employees want to know it's there. And their employees need a way to be engaged in the community. And it's just a beautiful way to get them there.
Well, it really is. And, in many ways, Atlanta is getting more complex, right? I mean, the Atlanta of 20 years ago was more centered to downtown, more, just kind of large companies, whatnot. Now you've got companies that are people coming from elsewhere now, spending a little time and then leaving. It's more international, more disaggregated. I think business has always been behind supporting the Woodruff Arts Center, and it'll always be that way. But as Atlanta gets more complex, is it changing that dynamic of letting people appreciate what the arts is, or does it make it easier?
I think it calls for, just to be frank, it calls for more marketing. I think we have to let people know. We have to let people be the new CEOs coming into town, the new young people coming into town, the millennials, the Gen Zs. We've got to let them know it's great art, but there's something there for everyone. So I think we've got. We a little bit at the Woodruff Arts Center itself have a little bit of a marketing challenge. Each of the art partners do a beautiful job with marketing, and people know who they are and they know what they stand for. And I'm just in awe of how they do it. But I think if we can market, quote unquote, the Woodruff Arts Center itself a little bit better, it just starts to reach more people and makes it just for them to know the depth and breadth and the richness there. So, you're giving me some real softballs here. I mean, I'm very excited.
It's true, though.
Taking some of those types of things to the next level. I'm sitting here telling you guys about all these beautiful things that the art partners are doing that, again, they're the brains behind it. But I do hope that sort of from the business side, we can be the ones pushing out and making sure that every person and every company and every organization in this region knows that we're here and that we have something for them.
Well, I mean, again, I think that, the seat you had before and the seat where you bring it now is such a key insight into what the center can be for us over the next 10 or 20 years. So thank you both. What a great, enriching discussion. A lot of fun, and we do look forward to leaning in. Our club is so involved with the Woodruff in many respects individually, but what our club collectively can do too, we'll look for our stride. So, Hala, thank you. Virginia, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Thank you.